North London is rich in its cultural diversity. There are so many different types of people from so many different backgrounds in North London, so it's a pleasure to be in the area. However, there is still a lot of discrimination, and the outcomes for people, particularly from black and ethnic minorities, is really poor compared to that of other people. So the public sector organisations in North London and a number of the voluntary sectors got together in the forum, and they signed a pledge that they would pursue equal opportunities in North London. And their initial impetus was on racial equality as far as equal opportunities were concerned. So they set up the forum, and they decided to look at each other's policies and procedures, advise each other on best practice, and take that forward. Although a lot of the organizations had very good policies and procedures and had them in place for many years, the outcomes for black and ethnic minority people was really poor compared with that of other people. And that was felt to be an important drawback and a need for great improvement. And not only is it in terms of recruitment, where probably there are the best policies, but also in career progression, because often in a major public organization, the people at the bottom of the organization may be from minorities. Those at the top certainly are not. So career progression is an important aspect. The second important aspect is in terms of suppliers, particularly where there are suppliers who are doing major regeneration projects in North London. And it's important for the public sector organizations to ensure that the equal opportunities and racial equality policies that they pursue are also pursued by their suppliers. Another aspect of suppliers is the fact in North London, unemployment among black and ethnic minorities, at whatever level of skill or educational achievement, is significantly higher than that in other types of people. And it's important therefore to give an opportunity for the black and ethnic minority small businesses, which form a high percentage of North London's business community, to have the opportunity to get business with these organizations. So we were concentrating on those two aspects of suppliers. In addition, we are also looking at the third area, which is in the area of clients and in the area of customers. And our aim is that once we in the public sector and voluntary sector have got our house in order, we will work with the private sector in order for them also to achieve the racial equality and to sign the pledge of equal opportunities that all of us have signed in our public sector organizations.
Yes, I think the Training Enterprise Council has always felt that they had to engage and wanted to engage with black and ethnic minority businesses and the community generally. And we've taken a number of initiatives over the last 2 or 3 years to ensure that we do that. One of the things that we've taken forward particularly strongly is a cultural diversity forum, which has enabled us to have dialogue with the community and to try and ascertain their problems and their issues that they face, either as individuals or as businesses, and to reflect those particular issues in the way we deliver our services, both, as I say, to individuals and to businesses. The new arrangements, well, both the Training Enterprise Council and the Business Link are going to be subject to considerable changes over the next year. The Training Enterprise Council will transfer and be transformed into something called the Learning and Skills Council, and the Learning and Skills Council will take forward the budgets of the existing Training Enterprise Council and also the college budgets as well, which is a significant change and a significant amount of money as well. The budget for the Learning and Skills Council nationally will be around £5 billion per year, which, as I say, is a significant amount of money. On the Business Link side, that will be transformed into something called the Small Business Service, and the Small Business Service will take forward many of the Department of Trade and Industry programmes and the Business Link agenda to companies employing between 1 and 250 employees, so it's a significant role there as well.
We're delighted to be hosting this event on behalf of a number of small a number of business support agencies and community groups, and I see many of them here today. All of you, I think, have a common interest in promoting enterprise and cultural diversity. We hope that by the end of today, there will be in place a new business support agenda for London, which clearly focuses on the existing and potential enterprises among London's diverse communities. Our discussion today is in the context of a number of key developments that are happening. The first and probably one that is in the forefront of one or two of our minds at the moment is the setting up of a single small business service for London, which starts, as many of you know, in April next year. There's also a new small business agenda to address competitiveness and social inclusion. The new London Development Agency, which will include race equality strategies in economic development, and government and private banking sector recognition of financial exclusion and institutional racism. The key reference point which pulls all these issues together is the view that ethnic minority businesses is not a marginal issue. And I think the key thing for me, what I totally believe in, is that in London especially, ethnic minority business development is inextricably linked to the sustainable development of London's economy as a whole, as well as the regeneration of local communities. 20% of businesses in London are ethnic minority owned. In North London, this figure is around 40%. With the growing ethnic minority population, especially in the context of recently arrived refugees, these figures, I think, are set to rise. Within the overall figures, there is a diversity in business types within all the different sectors. There are also a high number of ethnic minority businesses owned by women. We believe that against this background of change, there lies opportunities for agencies at a local level to offer increased support to ethnic minority businesses. Business Link are taking forward targeted support in 5 sector areas. They're in retail, international trade, creative industries, construction and food. We will also be developing the use of web-based technology to develop supplier diversity. And we'll be working with partners in the North London Cultural Diversity Forum to encourage the opening up of tendering opportunities. We believe that North London's made some headway, but the opportunities are there for us to do much more. We need to research and understand ethnic minority business needs. We need to raise the Business Link profile and credibility within the community. We need to make ourselves more approachable, and we need to find advocates and champions from the community we're talking of. There's a lot to do, and today I think will help to ensure that all voices are heard and used to develop a more comprehensive and accessible range of support services targeted at helping ethnic minority businesses.
The role of Business Link London North is really to deliver the Department of Trade initiative to help small and medium-sized enterprises. We're one of 9 business links in London. There are something like 50 or so across the whole of the United Kingdom. And the remit from the Department of Trade and Industry really is to marshal business support to help businesses start, survive, compete and grow. It's a 4-plank strategy, and we therefore put resources into the marketplace that meets those in different need requirements in different parts of the community. Well, the rich diversity of North London is both a challenge and an opportunity. It's a challenge in terms of being able to make ourselves accessible to all the different communities, for example, that we have, and all the different needs that the businesses have within those communities. We have some very high growth businesses. Internet-based businesses, for example, are very much a growth area. Barnet, we can see a lot of high growth activity in internet-based businesses coming from there. We also have in Haringey and Enfield a number of manufacturing businesses, some of which could be classed as high growth and developing fast, some could be surviving and hanging on, some could be in industries that have had a big knock-on effect from changes in the environment, changes in the economic situation. We also have a lot of businesses that sit there within the community and within the different groups. Retail-based businesses, for example, we see them all around us. Some, again, are fast-growing, some are having a big difficulty in competing and hanging on into certain shopping areas. So the needs of the businesses are diverse. The cultures that we're working with are diverse. And whilst, as I say, that is both an opportunity, it's also a challenge to see how we can marshal what in effect are limited resources to best suit the needs of those different groups and those different sectors. Well, the North London areas of sectors that are important are in part attuned with what the London Development Agency has identified through its recent competitiveness strategy research. These are, of course, manufacturing, which in London is still very, very important, and not often recognised as being important, but particularly in North London we recognise it because it is so important to us here in North London. There are other sectors, e-commerce, a huge growth sector, which is really beginning to take off in ways that none of us could have imagined 3 years ago, let alone 5 years ago. There are areas such as logistics and distribution, which are very important to us, particularly in North London, situated so much within the M25 area, and yet also close opportunities with the developing Stansted Airport infrastructure, for example. And then we have other industries like construction, where there's a huge diversity in terms of both the marketplace and also the supporting networks of small self-employed builders, main contractors, subcontracting. So there's quite a diversity of different sectors. Logistics and distribution would be another one, where we're trying to target specifically both the economic regeneration needs and the complex diversity of the cultures that we have within North London. The creative industries and international trade are two particular opportunities we have here in North London. Very much the diversity of the cultures that we have gives us some particular opportunities that we can pick up on. The trading opportunities in international trade are already being served by ventures that have been initiated in London, such as the Global Trade Centre. We are working very much in partnership with the Global Trade Centre in providing specialist export and import counselling advice, import documentation services, and also to help set up businesses that want to pick up on some of the unique opportunities they have for developing international trade opportunities. As far as the cultural industries are concerned, again, the ethnic diversity that we have in North London makes this a really vibrant area of opportunity. We have, again, specialist support through the Digital Arts Centre that is maintained in North London, another initiative that was set up some time ago, where businesses there that want to develop can be supported through our business advisor network and specialist counsellors, possibly in raising finance through our Access to Finance team, in helping with specialist marketing advice through our marketing counsellors, and in generic or general business support about how a business plan should be developed, how an opportunity can be exploited through the advice and support of our generalist personal business advisors. So there's quite a range of support that can be marshalled both with other members of the Business Link Partnership, the Digital Arts Centre and the Global Trade Centre, and also through some of the generic advice that we have as being part of a Business Link support mechanism.
The Chamber of Commerce is heavily involved in bringing together all members of the business community in North London. The only way that you can regenerate business and the community is holistically from the bottom up. The Chamber therefore believes any organisation that's involved in economic activity, that can be community businesses, charitable businesses, voluntary sector, as well as what people have always considered to be the mainstream sector, all have a common link with the Chamber of Commerce. Chambers of Commerce have evolved over a number of years, but the last few they have not really moved forward. They haven't taken advantage of new industrial sectors like the creative sector, and in parts of North London like Haringey this is a huge and it's a growing part of industry. It's creating new exciting jobs, different jobs, and they're looking at not just North London, they're looking at Greater London, they're looking across the world as being their market, and we need to be a part of that. To some extent, it's the third meeting we've had on similar lines. We actually hosted at short notice and held a meeting when the Bank of England produced a report on issues within financing ethnic minority businesses, and that report from memory came out in May, and we held a meeting that was referred to earlier on the 15th of June.
I suppose what I wanted to do was to bring us back to the three aims of the workshop in a way, and the first one being identify practical business support relations relating to these special issues. But the title of the workshop, Finance, Practical Steps for Improving Access to Finance, the way I read that is, okay, what the whole day is about is the business support issue, and therefore how can business support organisations assist with that access to finance, given all the things that we know about issues with access to finance. I haven't come down to today with sort of golden solutions for providing access to finance, because I'm a, if you like, a industry policy maker, not a practical banker anymore on the ground. And one of the things that's been intriguing from the work that we do is if you look at the Bank of England report on and the issues it was raising on discrimination, for example, and perceived, is it actual, is it perceived? Where is there a lack of understanding? The whole thing keeps coming back to communication all the time, and I think that's one of the single most important areas. And I was doing some work with John Daly's team, where VJ operates as well up in Harrow, and one of the things that came through a workshop we had there was this idea of when we're looking at finance, business support, and supply, are we considering that as an entire process? So, or are we just looking at, well, I've got a problem in getting finance from my bank or my leasing company or the community finance fund or whatever, and I don't understand why, or I've had this training on putting business plans together and on understanding how I should go about my market, but I've got all these bits of paper and I don't really know what to do with them from a practical point of view, and I've had this training but I still can't get the finance. Or I've got my finance and I've had my training, but I can't get anybody to buy from me. And so all these things are very, very closely linked together. And I think one of the main things that I think is extremely important in getting solutions to specific issue is, one, that it's local, so that it's locally owned. So there's no point people like me saying, well, I think we should do that very grandly because I'm sort of high-level policy and I can look at it from that level. But it's how the business links, the techs, the community support groups, the local branches of banks all operate on a local level and talk to each other. And also the businesses that are buying and supplying to all businesses, not just ethnic minority businesses. So what I would like to see, if you like, as a single output, if there is to be one, is a measure to actually get and make sure that those groups are actually working, so that when somebody goes to get their training, it links somehow to the finance that they're going to get, and that somehow that they can go in the knowledge that they've already been able to negotiate a contract with a business to buy from them if they're in the business of producing things, or they know roughly what their local market is in terms of if they're supplying the public in some way that way. So that's really the point that I wanted to make, Andre.
Are you suggesting that if that holistic approach was adopted, that a number of the issues that Brenda raised may well be attended to if they were going to the professional providers for those?
I think that the important thing is that what it does do is opens up the channel of communication, so you've got that greater understanding. And if you've got that greater understanding, then there is more likelihood, I think, from the research that's been done in the past, that where that understanding is there, that issues as they arise can be dealt with.
My name is George Martin, and I, at the present moment, head up a number of small voluntary sector company. One is in Aringe Homes, which is an housing association. I've been in business now for well over 15 years. It was a joint partnership between the council and the Nationwide Bank. The next project I'm chair of is brought out from Enterprise Workshop, which won an award some years back from the Printers Trust. I also run my own business in this country for the last 35 years, which is the software engineering business. Now, the question here is, what single subject we could pick on to make a difference? And that's what I want to target now. Now, I was one of the first person to bring to the Afro-Caribbean community a proposal to set up a bank in this country.
If I kind of took you back a bit, I'm not answering your question directly, but I'm starting from the point of view of the way agencies interact with communities, with ethnic communities. Quite often it actually starts off from a point of view of deprivation. You kind of start off by saying, well, we have to give these people special attention because they're deficient in this way and that way and the other way. It then seems to me that what happens is that the advisors then, starting from that position, tend to have less confidence in the proposers of business ideas that comes from those communities because of how you started off. And to me, there's a real, we need to get over this kind of like a watershed if you are really going to be in a situation where when I bring my proposal to you as the advisor, you really see me and that initial response, see my proposition as worthy as anybody else's proposition. So I'm saying, because of the way it starts off, the interaction tends to be, you know, yeah, I'm listening to you, but I don't really believe that you can do and you can deliver what you say. I do agree that in terms of developing a business, finance is not the only thing you need, but finance is critical. And without finance, you can't get into the game. And you need greater access to finance if you're going to be successful in developing businesses. But I think more than access to finance, I think the thing that is clear to me is that we need access to opportunity to do business. And part of the thing that was being talked about today by the council saying that they want to do more, I actually welcome those kinds of things. What I would welcome even more is when they can put up a real live example of someone who's benefited from all this talk. So we do need access to opportunity. What we in Birmingham Partner Fund are saying is that we don't want to go alone and you see us as, you know, in order for us to get this grant, we have to have half a leg missing or you have to do this and that, right? We're saying we actually have our own money, we're coming to do business. And we are going to find people who actually want to do business with us by continuously going out there trying to put up the case. Here is our record, here are the things we've done, and these are the kind of things we want to do more of.
A very specific question then. What's the largest amount of money that you can recall off the top of your head that you've levered in? So in other words, from one source or another, you've put a package together. How large in your fund? What's the largest amount of money you think that you may have levered in?
Well, we actually bought a small office block in Birmingham, £250,000. We actually put up £100,000 and we borrowed the rest of the money from the bank.
So that's £250,000 is what you levered in.
And we didn't have any problems. But then again, once you've got your own money, you don't have problems.
Less problem.
Yeah.
The TEC has had an equality strategy for the past 2 years focused on mainstreaming equal opportunity in all of its activities, and in order to do that it's promoted equalities through a wide partnership of agencies working in North London in order to maximise the impact we can get. In particular, we have promoted through the Cultural Diversity Forum 3 main areas, and that is diversity of the employees of the bodies in the forum, of the customers and clients of the service providers in that forum, and also the suppliers to the main public sector bodies in the Diversity Forum. So far, the TEC itself has been responsible through its equal opportunity strategy for equal access and outcomes from its main training programmes. In the future, what we're working towards is that all bodies working in the area will be accountable and responsible to the same kind of standards for access and outcomes through the services they deliver, and that will apply to business support services, youth support services, as well as education and training into the future.
Fair Play is a government-funded organisation, and I see its role as really addressing the barriers and disadvantages associated with women, and providing a platform or a way forward in order to address these barriers and these problems. And fundamentally, that's what I see its role to be. Yes, quite effectively. We've been involved in a number of projects, particularly the ones hosted by the Synergy Project. The one that was the most successful, I believe, occurred at the end of last year, and it was a construction event hosted in North London. And the way the Fair Play was involved is that we were a participant in a workshop where we were able to engage with a large percentage of girls. As you know, this is recognised by the government as a disadvantaged area where very few women are involved in construction and engineering and science subjects and careers. So we saw this as fundamentally important to get involved in addressing the issues and perhaps engaging in local people and in children to become involved in this sort of work. Well, Fair Play is again actively involved in areas of business, and particularly black and ethnic minority women in business, and we are very, very keen in encouraging black ethnic minority women to set up businesses and become far more business-minded or oriented, and perhaps helping them identify again some of the barriers that black women face when they're setting up business or in order to progressing and developing their businesses. So I know that Fair Play particularly is very interested in this type of work. Fair Play's recently commissioned a report by the Industrial Society on refugee women, and it looked at issues surrounding the barriers and obstacles faced by refugee women. But it also looked at, on a positive side, it looked at the fact that these women coming to the United Kingdom are actually highly skilled and qualified. Fair Play will be taking these recommendations on and addressing the barriers faced by women.
My name's Sandra Ricketts, and I run a company called Women Moving Unlimited. I'm the founder and director of the company. And I started my company in September '97. I launched it with sponsorship from NatWest Bank, and I invested £3,000 of my own funds, which I had saved over a period of time. And our main focus is to support and encourage women that are in business or women that want to move on in personal development in their lives. Excuse me. And it's for all women. There's no cultural background. Women from whatever walk of life, whether you've been at home taking care of the children for the past 5 years and they're now in school and you may want to develop into training or you want to go into a business. And I launched the company as a result of some of my own personal experiences in working with women in the challenges, and sometimes you get stuck in situations where you have to get up and move on. My background is in business management and training. I worked 8 years at a business center, and I left last year December, and I went part-time 3 years, and then I left because I was in Atlanta. I just came back from the US last week. I was out there for 3 months working with women in business and speaking at conferences. And wherever you go, women have same challenges all over the globe. My company focuses on doing training and an annual conference. We stage a business conference every year, and we'll be staging our third conference on the 17th of May in South London. And the theme of our conference this year is Global, Not Local. And it's about encouraging and supporting women all over the globe to work together, for us to form strategic alliances, to work in partnership and in association, because I feel now that we're into this new millennium and this new century. As women, we have to positively come together collectively and not just keep talking about the issues and the challenges. You know, it's time to switch now. It's time to move on. And having spent 3 months in the US, I gained such a wide perspective of different experiences and challenges. And I have a small delegation that are coming over in May for my conference. And if any women here who want support, I'm happy to come and offer support to their organizations. And it's not always about funds or monies, because when you start, sometimes the monies isn't there. You can exchange ideas, skills, and services. I have a PA that works with me. I have 5 ladies that volunteer with me. Every event I have, they're with me, they support me. I also have my brother that does events and works with me. He's my sound engineer. And support comes, because sometimes you just have to give to get. And it's not always about money. It's about really believing in yourself and believing in your vision. and in your dreams. And in my experience, what's kept me going is that self-belief and the faith, because sometimes the money isn't there, believe me. I just got back into the country the other day and everybody's phoning you, they want money, they want this, they're ready to blacklist you and what have you. So it's really about just having faith and really as women giving collective support so we can move on together. Sorry.
Yes. And ask you a specific question.
Okay.
You're now full-time in your business.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of support you feel you should have received that you didn't? If you could just tell me in one sentence whether there is, and if so, what?
Well, finance is always welcome.
Finance.
I would say, yeah, definitely.
Who did you feel you needed to receive that finance from? Was it from the bank or from the government agencies?
Wherever it comes from, basically. I mean, in the early days, I did get finance for some agencies in South East London because that's where I worked.
What about now?
Now,
do you still have finance problems or something like overdraft? Having your overdraft increased, like
no,
before
what
talked
I do,
about?
I fund it with whatever funds I have, and for my events, I get sponsorship from organisations today. But
so you're all right for now?
I'm not all right for now. Definitely not. But because
shall we quickly move on to a brainstorming? Shall we find a heading?
For me, I think this is just for me personally, but I think the whole issue around business networks and mentoring is a really critical, because that is traditionally how men access opportunities. They know, they know people in the right sort of place, and I think that is denied.
So we more or less feel that a business and a network which will be both business and other issues is very important, and within that network we'll probably be able to either help people channel themselves to the right people, or actually within ourselves find the resources that could help people get through certain challenges.
We already have got our business plan, which we are updating. The business plan of our organization has got everything within. It's the childcare.
So you've got everything done, but one of the main problems is the perception of the decision makers.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one. So we've all agreed on one point to be fed back.
And good morning, I'm glad to be here, and Enfield is very committed to the concepts behind this conference today. To me, modern local authorities, the key issue is one of partnership. That is partnership in problem definition, in problem solving, and in service delivery. Local authorities are no longer simply civic estates of patronage. Government expects and funding expects joint working, and I anticipate in an increasingly complex world that the delivery of public services will not simply be siloed into one area and another, like local authorities, health, and so on and so forth. But the concepts of joint working and the concepts of delivery will become increasingly merged. I think that's important to hold in people's minds, because what we might be doing now might not be precisely what we might need to do in 10 years' time. But perhaps what we need to do now is a staging post in which to get there. And I suppose that from a local authority perspective, what we've got to try and establish is what are the key blocks that prevents black and minority ethnic communities exploiting local authority contacts and opportunities. It could be perceptions of or real institutional racism. It could be a lack of capacity, a lack of business support. It could be funding problems, or it could be a knowledge of structures. But also I think it's important to understand what maybe holds back local authorities. It could be internal focus. It could be conflicting priorities. It might be political opposition. It could be bureaucratisation, or it might be funding constraints. And I think we need to try and recognise, as two partners, what might be those blockages that we seek to overcome. Enfield is certainly not perfect, and I wouldn't wish to suggest it was. But I think what I can demonstrate is that we are making genuine attempts to improve our interface with a whole series of sections of our community. And only by doing that do I believe we'll be able to create specific opportunities which people can exploit. For people who are not familiar with Enfield, Enfield is made up of a series of diverse communities. A third of our population are from ethnic minority communities. It is a borough that is relatively schizophrenic in the way that it is laid out. We have a fairly affluent western part of the borough with above average incomes, a higher than average number of people with higher education qualifications, whereas in the east we have below average incomes, areas of acute social deprivation, objective 2 status, and skill shortages. So it's a borough with a whole series of contradictions perhaps and challenges. As a local authority, we have embraced very much the government's modernisation agenda. That's to make local government more accountable and approachable, more accessible, and try and make it more responsive. And we've certainly done that in the way that we've sought to move on in our political structures. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing those political structures. I think that's for another day, other than perhaps to point to one particular area, and that is in fact in terms of our scrutiny panels. We've adopted the cabinet model, which some of you may be familiar with, is one of the options that the government is laying before us in the way to change local authority structures. And what we decided to do is to establish 6 scrutiny panels. And one of those scrutiny panels is our business development scrutiny panel. We decided not to structure our scrutiny panels on the basis of traditional committee structures, education, social services and leisure and so on, but to try and go for themes so that we can try and join up the various aspects of the council. We've also tried to embrace consultation as much as we can. Some of that has been simply at the level of surveys. We have a Moray poll, we have a citizens panel, and we've tried through those to get a better feel of what it is that people want from the local authority. Because you have a classic dilemma of trying to find out whether and believe whether what you're being told is actually what people think. In terms of housing, for example, we are developing a black and minority ethnic policy which is intended to help small black and minority ethnic housing associations into Enfield. And we'll do that with our own localised development initiative, using capital grants for BME development and mainstreaming BME needs and issues, and a plug for a conference at the end of April, the beginning of May, that we're holding.
Right, what is the British Bankers Association? As distinct from a bank, we are the trade association, the principal trade association for banks in the UK. We have over 300 members from across the world, so not just UK banks, they come from most of the countries in the world where they have a London office. And we perform a number of roles. One is political lobbying to the government on issues affecting the banking community. One is on devising best practice for the industry, and also education for not banks so much as the people who deal with banks, so like the SME community. We also operate as a discussion forum for industry issues where the banks can come to us and say there is an issue here which we need to talk about. And that's done through a series of advisory panels where we get together relevant people from the individual banks who are interested in that particular issue to discuss whatever it is that needs to be discussed. And that's really the context in which the work that we're doing here is being discussed. We're discussing issues raised over the last few years in relation to the financing of ethnic minority businesses within what we call our Small Firms Advisory Panel. This is the heads of small business banking of all the major banks who are involved in the small business market. So to give you an idea, that's the kind of level where we're holding the discussion. Okay, where has this actually come from? And what are the issues that it's creating for us within the banking industry? And if we go, I make no apologies for the fact this is rattling through very important parts of history, but it's the only way to condense it really. But going back to the 1950s and 1960s, where you've got different strands of immigration from different parts of the globe, people coming into the UK with different backgrounds, some with business backgrounds, some with very little in the way of assets themselves. So again, from a business point of view, starting from very different perspectives. Coming through to the 2 points on the inner city riots from the early 80s and the Scarman report in 1981, the reason that they're in there is because if you look back to the 50s and 60s, we were, as a country, completely asleep with these issues. You get into that sort of area, and these are the wake-up calls saying that as industries, as society, time to start paying attention. That what was particularly interesting, I think, in the Scarman report was saying that enterprise was being pinpointed as a way of creating wealth to allow people to earn themselves out of a particular situation. As far as the banking's connection with this is concerned, you look back to sort of 1985 in the Home Office Ethnic Minority Business Initiative, and that was probably the first official response to what we've been seeing over the previous 20 years. And then out of that came the Into the Mainstream conference, where the banks were involved in 1989. And what that did was very interesting because it really started to throw up some of the real issues that have been logged through research probably over about the previous 10 years or so. Some of the perceptions that came through then from that Into the Mainstream conference, and these are very, very interesting because if you compare them with where we are now, which is what I'll do in a minute, then that's the point of our research really. Out of the Into the Mainstream conference came, and the focus groups were involved in that. There was this perception that banks treat ethnic minority businesses less favourably. There was stereotyping by bank staff, poor communication and community involvement, and a lack of experience in bank staff in dealing with ethnic minority businesses. So what we decided was that we would set up a longitudinal survey initially over 2 years. So what would that give us for the first time would be the ability to actually track the development of businesses over time, to make sure the key sectors are represented in there, and give dynamic tracking of individual business as well as trends as a whole for sectors. We want this to be a practical from the point of view of it's very well that us in these sort of policy making places are sort of saying, well, okay, we think that needs to be done and that's a good idea and why don't we have a go at that, but unless actually that filters through to action on the ground, then we don't feel that anything will ever really be done. So what we're trying to do is to have a piece of work that will throw out some action points at particular levels which can then be followed through in the communities that we're dealing with, who we'll be continuing to communicate with during the research process, to say, well, this is how the businesses, the banks, the business links and what have you can actually work together on the ground. I mentioned the business links. I mean, DTI are funding part of this together with the banks and the Bank of England, and the CRE are also involved to give us a steer on the controlling group. The ultimate aim of this is that this study is different because it then becomes a benchmark for the industry. We aim that it will be repeated after 2 years and just carry on rolling so that we can track over a much longer period. And then when we're commenting on what's actually happening within the sector, we've actually got a piece of research that we can keep referring back to, which is consistent over time, rather than keep referring to small pockets of research which might look at specific issues but not the general overall trend. And that's all I want to say, but I'll be very happy to discuss any of the details of that in more detail with people at a later date. But I hope that just gives a flavour of where we came from and why we thought it was important to add another piece of research into an area which is already full with the research already. Okay, thanks.
The topic that was given to me, I think Rudy was a bit unkind, really, because if this was an exam question, I think I would say pass, and I would have failed. But I thought I would put some teasers, which are slightly different from the run-of-the-mill. We were so used to the problems. I could sit here or stand here and recite all the problems about setting up businesses, especially black and ethnic minority businesses. I don't have to think about them. Quite frankly, even before I smell my coffee, I know you will talk about discrimination, so many barriers, this, that, and the other. We know it. Inaccessible, and I mean, it's a paraphernalia. We all know them. So I thought I would be slightly different this afternoon. I thought I should as I said, bring a few more, just a bit of some teasers and get you thinking in the same way but slightly differently. And I think that really the key to setting up businesses is the structures that are in being. Do the structures that we have facilitate the setting up of small businesses? Where are they? We're talking about communities, isn't it? Which communities? Where are these communities? How many are they? I'm not talking about people preparing to start up. I'm talking about the communities from which we draw these people. You know, it's a diverse community of black and ethnic minorities. Do we know them? Do we understand them? Now, that's the background I was giving you. A few years ago, I undertook a study on the transfer of technology. It was very interesting that the issues that we face today in terms of business support are actually quite related to the issues we raised then in terms of the effective transfer of technology. And I decided therefore to borrow some models of technology transfer and see whether we could use this as a benchmark in the way we provide services for black and ethnic minority businesses. The first model that we looked at was the primitive direct transfer. You will all remember that when the smallpox vaccination was first invented, it was good for everybody worldwide, wasn't it? It was good for everybody. Now, it seems to me that if you look at some of the programs that we provide for businesses are based on that very old model of primitive direct transfer. It will work. It has worked for us, it will work for everybody. Now, there are dangers there. Look at the determinants. And by the way, you could add your own there. This is just a brainstorm exercise. It worked for us. It works everywhere. They are not different from us. Of course they are different. But we need to understand them. Back to the first question. If you look at the implications of that model, in most cases, if you use that model, it failed in technology transfer, and I think it does fail today. It's an outright rejection. In some cases, it's not totally rejected, but there's very low take-up of whatever you want to provide to that community because you don't understand it. The other is inaccessibility, because you don't understand those people, they don't understand you, there's just, you're talking different languages. And of course, it's going to be very costly, because the cost of failure is very high. We measure this in technology. I haven't measured it in the business support service, but the cost is very high. That's model one. The second model that we developed in those years, and I make no apology, but to say that it was relevant at the time in terms of technology transfer. The second was study the recipient model. Consciously, the donors or the providers would identify the needs of the community or the target group. They would look at would analyze the client's needs, they would then identify with the clients. That's true empathy with the clients. There would be participation of clients in their programs and so forth, both in policy and delivery. And then these are the determinants. If you look at the implications, usually there's a very high rate of acceptance. There are shared values. What today would call networking. There's a lot of networking taking place. Less resource expenditure, obviously. The shared outcomes. There's genuine commitment by both provider and the recipient. And then the third model. This one is very interesting because this is where the money coffers are. We call this study the provider model. And the determinants of these, naturally, because they control the mechanisms, they control the persons and so forth, is institutional survival and perpetuation. There's cultural arrogance in many ways. There's power, authority, control, literacy, out of fear. And then there's resource constraints, obviously, because they can only spend so much of their money to do A, B, C, Z. Now, usually these kind of organizations live in the past. history is so important to them, there's secrets about it. And there is genuine ignorance in some cases. They mean to do good, but they're very ignorant of what's happening on the ground. Now, the implications of that, obviously, as the first model, tend to be outright rejection by the client group. Low take-up, if partially accepted, that is. Otherwise, totally inaccessible and very costly.
I'm drawn first of all to Onias's paper, and I think he's kindly stayed with us this afternoon. Ones of support available, doubts about the relevance of what is offered, confusion about which provider can best meet the firm's needs. We heard how the SBS is going to give us an opportunity to reshape a lot of this, get it right. I've mentioned briefly that the £20 million funding is still, however, all that's on offer. As David Smallbones said, the service is now to be provided to all businesses, whereas before it was much more prioritised, much more specified in its delivery. And some points that I'd just like to toss back onto the floor that came out of the what David Smallbone called a policy agenda. He highlighted 7 points I quickly scribbled down, but just 3 I could throw back to start with that tie into some of the points I've just made. The need to respond to the reasons for poor take-up by ethnic minority businesses, the need for monitoring and accountability for outcomes. I'd like to hear some feedback possibly on that. The need to view support for ethnic minority businesses as part of a segmentation strategy in which ethnic minority businesses are a key segment. And the need to find ways to encourage and support ethnic minority business development in high value added activities.
Let's say ethnic or black or whatever. When I go in to say talk to the council or set up a business or get another project on the ground, I go in and it says, yes, Ricky, this is a great idea. And then what happens is when you actually say set up a partnership with other groups, we set up a partnership. And then we was told, yes, wonderful idea by the Regeneration, wonderful. Go ahead and set this up. So we did. And then after a while, what happens is, all of a sudden, the powers to be swept in and just everything all stopped. Because it's Big Brother approach all the time, is we know best. And yet these community groups were saying, no, leave us alone. We know what we're doing. When we need the help from you, we will come and ask you, and then we will ask you to help us to go forward. No. What happens is they come in, they tell you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and we all disappear. And then they wonder why this happens.
That's very helpful. Providers and users, but also at the same time allows you to target on those areas or focus on those areas that have been identified by research as needing assistance. So, for example, you get a report like the Royal Holloway report, the underrepresentation of black and Asian people in the construction industry, where that shows clearly the discrimination at all levels, whether it is in the professional side, the craft side, in education. So by targeting that area, you're just seeking to redress something that has been agreed. And I think that's very much David Smallbone's point about this research and this independent research, which is sort of convinced me that if this research is done right, then once that ground has been laid, then if we then target those areas and put them right, there shouldn't be a cause for people to start trying to dodge around the cause and say, well, should the resources be applied there or not, which I know does happen, but hopefully these days, with the amount of partnerships and the determination to get things done, we can get over some of those hurdles.
We have first level support coming from GTC, and Isidora has outlined the historical and basically community-based reasons why GTC was set up. And the fact now that GTC is in a position to use its friendly image that it is seen virtually around the world in many ways to try and promote its activities. Then at the same time we have the sort of contribution of the sort of second stage organisations such as CarryTag and Government Office for London and the Business Link support structures. CarryTag is committed to Caribbean trade on the basis of how it was set up, and through that it's developing some ideas of its own with helping British Trade International as to how to get greater links between UK business, small business in particular, and Mr. African Weeks with the Caribbean. In terms of Government Office for London, Government Office for London is key in terms of providing information. It has a wide source of information. The key thing to remember in terms of goal and business link, though, is that it is export focused, and that's one sometimes where difficulties may arise in terms of continual contact, is that they can only help businesses that are exporting as opposed to businesses that are looking at two-way trade. From the business point of view, I think one thing I picked up here is apart from the cultural diversity of the businesses, is the total economic diversity. I think I've already spoken to or heard from 2 or 3 businesses that are, so speaking, running 2 or 3 different enterprises at the same time. And in fact, possibly the financing or money from one goes to support the other. And that might presuppose that there might be some additional help that could come to try and develop one side in particular, maybe the trade side possibly, if the UK and the business needs, very much more time for it to be successful.
It's very important that women in business do network. A network system provides the women with access to information about the market and about other businesses. It gives women support from other women who are in business, and it also gives them advice on who to go to in terms of accessing the support agencies. So a support system for women in business is extremely important.
Yes, one project which is focused on London, which has been commissioned by the Government Office for London, is looking at the business support needs of African Caribbean businesses and how these can be better served in the future. Another project, which is a national project which we are just beginning, is concerned with the financing of ethnic minority enterprises, and clearly African and Caribbean owned businesses are an important part of this project. This is funded by the British Bankers Association, the Department of Trade and Industry, the Bank of England, and with the support of the Commission for Racial Equality. So this project is really trying to investigate some of the specific financing problems with small African, Caribbean and other ethnic minority owned businesses.
Well, the role of international trade in cultural development is very strong. It relates back to the first stage of business, which involves buying and selling. It also allows for local businesses who have strong historical and cultural links with countries, particularly in Africa and the Caribbean, to make use of those links to try and develop trade that benefits themselves and the country as a whole.
The Synergy Project is a special programme within North London, which is funded by North London Tech and Business Link London North, and also the North London Cultural Diversity Forum. It's been specifically designed to ensure that black and ethnic minority communities engage with the programmes throughout the whole region. And it's designed in a way that there are 3 programmes. Programme 1 is Diversity in Construction, Programme 2, Business and Economic Development, Programme 3, Social Inclusion and Enterprise. And each of these programmes are based on research and have seminars, workshops and conferences to actually deliver in the marketplace what the research has identified as being most important. Today's event has been Enterprise in Cultural Diversity, and we've really been looking at the policy development for business and economic development support for the next 12 months.